it's that joke in the black community of, everybody's got a crazy uncle. Oh, that's crazy Uncle Jimmy. You look over here talking in the corner, burn. It's just so funny. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. We treat it like that. And then if someone says, well, I'm going to go to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, well, that's just for white folks.
The multi-talented Wayne Brady has been a steady face in entertainment for the last 2 decades. From appearing as himself on shows like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And Let's Make a Deal, to a turn on Broadway in Kinky Boots and appearances on comedies like How I Met Your Mother and Chappelle's Show, Wayne has become a familiar face and personality. Wayne's also opened up in recent years about his struggle with depression, which is why he and his ex-wife Mandie Taketa joined me on Inner Space to talk about the impact of his struggles on their relationship and their approach to raising their daughter together as a divorced couple. I'm here in Los Angeles talking with Wayne Brady and Mandie Taketa. Great to meet you both. Many of our listeners and viewers will know Wayne as an actor, as a host, as a singer. Have I missed any sort of the...
Yeah, there's a lot, but I'd like to pride myself on whatever it is, I've done it.
Okay, cool.
And the things that haven't been done yet,
you may end up doing it.
Right, like the Swiss Army knife.
There you go.
So that's what I'm trying
and
to...
so I would love to start, if we can, just by the two of you telling our audience your relationship, because you were married, but now you're not. Clearly, you've been able to be together and not be together, but be healthy, it looks like, in your being apart, because you have a daughter in common.
Yes.
So can you give us just the history of when you got married and how long you were together, and maybe even, if you could, fill in the gaps of what you're comfortable with around Wayne. You've shared about dealing with depression and how that might have affected the relationship or not, and I'll just ask you questions along the way.
Well, first, I hope we reach a day when, for two people that were married, to co-parent or to exist in harmony isn't looked at like a circus sideshow or such an oddity.
I agree.
Because it makes no sense to me. Unless someone has done you some grievous wrong or so much has gone downhill that truly I need to excise this person from my life. If you have children, there's no reason why you can't be on the same page. It's not easy. It's work. It's work every day. And just like any friends or family members, you've got ups and downs. You've got days when you want to talk to each other. You have days when you don't want to talk to each other. You have days when you're like, man, I'm so glad that we're not married, because I don't have to have certain discussions or what. Those are human things. But then you also have days when we look at each other and we go, oh, isn't it amazing that we have this kid? We have a shorthand that no one else that I know in my life can speak. I've known her just as long as I've known certain family members.
Very thoughtful commentary about the way our society should view a couple that's raising a child together, even though they're divorced. My own life had a very painful divorce and was not able to do that with my ex-husband, my girl's father. And I remarried and have a good partner, and we're doing that. And we all tried. It sometimes isn't possible.
Right.
But the fact that you guys are doing it, I think gives people hope that maybe if they can do it, we'll try harder. We'll try to get there. So
that would be so good, because
I know.
it's for the kids.
It's for the kid.
Mandie and I were friends before we got married.
We're going on 21 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's more.
22?
We met in 95. This is
Okay.
Wow.
yeah, it's
Time flies,
Yeah,
right?
I was 19, yeah.
and I was 23, and we were friends before then, and then we got married, and I like to say that our marriage really was just so Miley could be brought into the world, and then we take care of the rest of our business, which is to then stay in each other's lives. So I also think it's unhealthy to say, well, let's just be friends and stick it out for our kids, because maybe at the very basic, like, look, I'm really not a fan of yours, but let's just be cool for the kids. we happen to like each other. We work together. We have a production company. We have Miley. We have things that we actually like to do in common.
That's so nice. And like you said, you were friends first.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can continue that's a gift to each of you and to your daughter, obviously.
I think we had an awesome marriage. We didn't fail. I think we just kind of moved on after learning a bit about self-care and love and learning about health. And so it doesn't bother me, but we're not sitting here because we have a daughter. For me, I love Wayne. You know, he's known me longer than anyone I know, and he knows me better than any family member I have. So I think for me, even if we didn't have Miley, I'd still have Wayne's back. You know,
Same.
but we're not lucky as well. Like we are, but people say you guys are so lucky. But no, we work really hard. We've gone through it. We've done a ton of therapy. We still do. It's been going on over a decade. So I mean, it's not easy, but worth it.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's a great message, and one of the things that I think we're trying to help people who are tuning in and listening is exactly that, Mandie. It's taking care of yourself, taking care of somebody you love, taking care of your kids. It's not always easy, but this notion of that people are either healthy or they're not, or they're lucky. It takes work. Relationships take work. Raising kids take work. Our mental health takes work.
So much work, and that kind of ties into our story. I wasn't aware of how much work. I don't think that anyone really is until you delve into it, and it wasn't until I reached a point where even Mandie was saying, right before we got divorced, I think that you need to look into this. I think you need to check your mental health. I think you need to talk to someone. I think you need to be open with certain feelings. And when you were even saying that you don't think that we failed, even the word failure or being exposed that way was so tied in to feelings of inadequacy if this doesn't work, so much so that they drive you to an unhealthy place. And it's just a hamster wheel that keeps going until you run yourself into a corner, which is what I feel happened. Because you're worried about how everyone is going to look at it. You're worried about how your people in the business are going to look at it. You don't want to fail. You don't want this to be a bad
Feel
thing.
shameful.
Shame,
Yes. The
shame,
guilt.
and shame and guilt, and all those negatives that you take on, and you don't realize that you're doing yourself more harm. And when you do yourself harm, then you lash out and you do the people around you harm.
Yes.
So that's what was starting to happen, and it had been happening for a while until, luckily, Mandie wanted for me to get help, and she knew that in order for her to get help, we had to pull ourselves out of this place. And at that point, that place was marriage. And I didn't see that. I just kept looking at it as, well, if we get divorced, now I failed, and this is horrible, and I'm bad, and I'm this, and I'm that. And then you lump all of that stuff on yourself.
Did you even know what depression, what that was, what it meant?
Absolutely not. I'd never heard the term used for anyone that I knew. Oh, this person's depressed. Because growing up where I grew up,
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Orlando, Florida,
Okay.
in a neighborhood called Tangelo Park. I'm predominantly black neighborhood, lower middle class, lower. It's that joke in the black community of, everybody's got a crazy uncle. Oh, that's crazy Uncle Jim. You look over here talking in the corner, burn. It's just so funny. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. We treat it like that. And then if someone says, well, I'm going to go to a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, well, that's just for white folks. We aren't crazy.
We don't
That's
do that.
There's a stigma, and I'm not saying it's just in that community. I'm only speaking from myself. I think there's a stigma in general, and you look in certain, there is a machismo component connected to a lot of different communities. But I'm just saying that in mine, that was a huge sign of weakness. You're what? You're depressed and you need to go to a doctor. That's crazy, and you're crazy for saying that you're crazy, but you don't need to and throwing that word around. So even if I felt bad or felt anything, I would have never said that.
When you look back, now in your own family, can you see depression now that you know what it is? Can you see signs it's in the family mix there?
Absolutely. And I'm not going to go into specifics
Right.
because I don't want some of the family members that, in my mind, knowing the things I know, I can easily point towards some of my relatives, very close relatives, and say, wow, well, you're codependent. You definitely have a love addiction. You have this, there's so much of it that I now can say absolutely that I grew up in the throes of it.
And isn't it sad? And I hope I see in my lifetime where this changes, because that means there's a lot of suffering that happened and continues to happen, right?
So
much.
So,
Mandie, in your family, did people talk about mental health, emotional health and well-being, depression, anxiety? Were those things that people, if somebody was suffering or hurting in that way, that it was addressed or talked about?
Absolutely not.
Where did you grow up?
In Honolulu, Hawaii. And I was oldest of four. And it's not something we talked about at all. I mean, my mom got very sick when I was 13, and she spent 11 years of her life dying, so she was bedridden for most of that time.
I'm so
So my dad was like a single father and took care of us and worked every day and sent us to school every day. We did martial arts. He is such a good parent. But as far as how do you feel about this, we didn't talk about it. It was kind of, suck it up. We're so lucky to be together. Suck it up. We're so lucky to eat. We're so lucky to be alive that almost like you should feel bad if you're too happy because something, you know what I mean? And so I was the perfect mate for Wayne. When we met, I'm just totally codependent, and we just totally,
But
I felt so lucky.
Right.
So lucky I could help take care of, and help make Wayne happy.
And
That
there
was
was
my
someone
mentality.
who was willing.
Yeah.
And
That made me happy.
Yeah. So you didn't have, neither one of you had the language. You didn't know what was happening. I mean, you could feel it, that this was not good or healthy or happy, but you didn't have the language really to talk about it. It doesn't sound like back then when you first came together.
I feel like it took a good decade before I could feel like that wasn't happiness. I didn't know how to distinguish what happy was and what healthy was and what unhealthy was until after we had Miley.
So talk about that, about having her and how it changed your life together, individually, because I didn't grow up with a mom, and so it was so important for me to be a good mom.
Yes.
And I was, determined, whatever else happened, come hell or high water. And so, and it was transformative for me to have my own child and to have that mother-daughter, which I never had. So talk about the power and what it did for each of you individually, the family, because clearly it sounds like having her continues to be this power in your family.
I feel like it was more of a stress than a power at first, because you were raised by your grandmother, so your parents weren't necessarily there. My mom was sick, and I grew up very fast. I became the caretaker for my brothers and sisters and my mom, and that the pressure of wanting to be the best parent for this one child that we have was so high that it wasn't real, and we didn't have the language. I feel that made me curious as to like what we're missing, because parenting should not feel this stressful.
Stressful.
Right, and wanting to make the good decisions and wanting her to be raised differently than us. Like we knew that there was something missing, but I think it was more stress than bliss for me at first.
It sounds like maybe that you, at whatever level, even if you didn't know sort of the words to put on it, you wanted her to have this goodness, that was important to you.
Yeah, and I loved Wayne so much that I knew it was possible to love him even more. I just I lacked compassion because I did not have the information. And I want Miley to have us there for her. I want her to see what love is. It may not be married, but we love each other, and she's from love. So that's what made me, I turned into like the spiritual gangster. Well, it's kind of like, let's figure this out. Something is missing. What is it,
Maybe there was a dark road ahead of me or darker, but because she started it and pushed me towards that, I think I was able to avoid a lot of badness in that I think a lot of people bump into when they are trying to find out what's wrong with them.
And that came after you all separated, or was that when you were still together before the
That was
divorce?
after we were separated.
And how did you do that? How did you, because clearly you did it, there was power to it, you know, but you cared enough about him to try to help him see. How did you do that?
It probably wasn't the healthiest way. I mean, it sounds nice, but I also did it because, maybe it was an excuse, but for our daughter. I didn't love myself enough to do it for me yet. So I'm like, this is a pattern I want to change for her first. And then later learn that, oh, I should have loved myself first, and, you know, I can't take care of her because I have a lot of issues too, you know. It's not all Wayne's fault, and I blamed him a lot. I would have done things differently, but I'm lucky that it worked out the way that it did.
You know, it's amazing if we listen to our kids. I mean, I think that for all of us, we grew up in a time where that didn't happen that much. You know, I don't remember too many times where I felt like adults were actually listening to me to see what I had to say.
Be seen and not heard.
Yeah, that's how I grew up.
We're trying, though. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And sometimes we don't
Yeah.
want to hear them.
Right.
You know, so that's appropriate too.
Not at all sometimes.
You're right.
Right.
Sometimes my husband will, because I've remarried. I was a single mom for a stretch of time, and I remarried. And sometimes my husband will, you know, say to the girls who are 18 and 22, you know, we're doing this now. You guys have to wait. You know, because they're used to having a lot of mom time because it was so important for me to be there, so important. So it's great because he's a balance to remind me sometimes, no, they can wait. And that's good for them too, that balance, but the listening, the being part of the conversation. And we are all figuring it out together. And times are changing. You mentioned, you know, can you encourage family conversations around the dinner table?
We try to have dinner together once or twice a week. No matter whose house Miley's at that point, myself, Miley, Mandie, and her boyfriend Jason, we will sit down and have a family dinner.
That's so cool. Last thing before we go, this show is all about, and you've both been so generous and honest and authentic, a word that I'm hearing a lot these days. What works for you? What is really important for you when you're taking care of your inner space, the part of you that we can't see? How do you each do that? What works for you? Mandie, I'll start with you first.
I have to remind myself not to blame anyone and to simplify what it is that I'm feeling.
And that's good for you.
And I need to meditate on that. Yeah. That way I know where I am.
That grounds you, it sounds like.
Right.
It's not out there, what's in here.
Right.
That's very cool. And Wayne, what works for you? How do you take care of your inner space?
For me, I need to reach out to people because if left to my own devices, I will isolate because I'm a super introvert, and when I'm not working, then because work is work, but if I'm home, I just want to be left alone. And I've been that way since I was a kid. I feel as I've gotten older, that protection device for myself. I don't know when it got started, but that's just the way that
Probably early, right?
Yeah, like I'll be better off on my own.
Yeah.
It's increased exponentially to now at this age. As soon as I don't have to be someplace or be around somebody, I'm out. So I need to do at least one thing a day, non-work related, to keep myself in the world.
Connect with other people.
Some sort of, even if it's a conversation, it could be just a conversation with one of the guys in my men's group, or a conversation with her, but I just cannot go a whole day without talking to someone. And I can absolutely go an entire 24-hour period without dealing with a soul.
Well, that's powerful, because I think people would, who are listening may think of you as being, out there, and wouldn't imagine that could be something that you might choose to disconnect in that way.
I like your answer more. Yeah.
I think both of you
asking for help.
Yes.
I'm working on that. So, I like that.
Well, I'll tell you,
with other people.
I'll tell you why I liked your answer, Mandie, as well. Because I think we go through the day, it's very easy to focus on what somebody else did to mess up our day, or what somebody else did to, get in the way of this or that external focus, and to bring it in, whether it's through mindfulness, whether it's through reflection, whatever it is, to tune into us, it's me right here, whatever I'm mad about or whatever, I'm at the end of that mad. I could do something about that. That's really powerful. And often something, as I'm thinking about your show with kids, something to help our kids understand. Because kids, especially, when they're in certain developmental stages, it's all about blaming everybody else.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, if we could start that now. Because I know that I would have loved that, because the quickest thing to go to is assignation of blame.
Yes.
Because it's just, it feels better, it's not me.
Yeah. You guys I can see, I've learned from talking with you today how and why you're able to work well together, and how you have been since you were both 19 and 22, 23. So thank you for coming and sharing your perspective, what you've learned, and I'm really excited about what you all are doing together. And a special thank you to Wayne and Mandie for sitting down to have such an open and honest conversation. Check out DCP Entertainment for more on inner space, and be on the lookout for more conversations about mental health.